at least to be able to do that or hasten their steps and join their colleagues inside the chambers. At least 15 senators are required to make the House be deemed to have quorated for the business or for the sitting to commence. And of course, we shall be keeping an eye on that particular number. When the quorum is raised, then we shall be handing this business back to the House for your following. Being a Wednesday morning, as indicated earlier, is that the House is expecting to receive 3 cabinet secretaries as lined up in the order of business for the senators this Wednesday morning. The Cabinet Secretary for Defense, Soipan Tuya, the Cabinet Secretary for Tourism and Wildlife, Rebecca Miano, as well as the Cabinet Secretary for Education, Julius Migos Ogamba. This morning are lined up to appear before the Senate, of course, to respond to various concerns that the members had raised earlier on. Remember, these questions or these concerns are usually forwarded to the ministries prior to the Cabinet Secretary's appearance before the House, and therefore when they appear before the House, then they usually have a comprehensive response to these various concerns. However, you will also recall, or you understand that there are supplementary questions, of course, arising from the primary question, and of course the Cabinet Secretaries also get a time to respond to those supplementary questions. So this morning, as we wait for the Cabinet Secretaries to be ushered in, or also as we wait for the quorum to be raised and for the House to commence its sitting, we shall be taking a look at the concerns that these Cabinet Secretaries, once they appear, or if they appear, they will be responding to. The Cabinet Secretary for Defense will be responding to concerns around the whereabouts and conditions of Sergeant Abdullahi Isa Ibrahim of the Kenya Army, who hails from Wajir County, who has remained unaccounted for since El Ade camp attack on 15th January 2016. This is a question, or this is a concern that has been raised by the Senator for Wajir County, Honorable Abbas Sheikh. Regarding the same concern is that if there was any justification for Kenya Defense Forces issuing certificates of presumption of death to the families of missing KDF soldiers, particularly in light of the recent emergence of videos of 2 officers indicating that they could be alive in captivity. Also, what psychological, financial, and welfare assistance has the Ministry of Defense and KDF provided to the families and next of kin of the missing soldiers since their disappearance? And the final question regarding the concern on the whereabouts and condition of the Sergeant Abdullahi Isa Ibrahim, who of the Kenya Army, who hails from Wajir County and is said to have remained unaccounted for since the El Ade camp attack of 15th January 2016, is that whether the Cabinet Secretary could outline the measures that have been taken to secure the safe return of Sergeant Ibrahim, Sergeant Wanyonyi Wasike, and other KDF officers in captivity, including possibilities of diplomatic negotiations or alternative strategies as used in past international conflicts. If you're just joining us, that the House is about to commence its business. The prayer has been said and the chair taken 8 minutes past the 9:30 time that the sitting is allocated to begin or commence. What the House is currently facing is a quorum hitch, much as you can see members or a number of members already in the chambers. The quorum has not been raised. At least 15 senators are needed. So that quorum bell is to give an allowance to the members to quicken their steps and get to the chambers to enable the House raise that much needed quorum and enable it also be able to commence its sitting. Remember, if that quorum is not raised at the lapse of the first round of the quorum bell, we shall get into the second round of the 10-minute quorum bell. However, if that quorum is still not raised at the lapse of the second 10-minute quorum bell, then the House risks being adjourned until the next sitting. However, you understand that being a Wednesday morning, is that the members already have a full entry of the business that is to be transacted, that is engaging various cabinet secretaries who they invited to appear before the chambers, of course, pursuant to the House Standing Order 51C, where the House receives responses from the cabinet secretaries or members of the cabinet regarding concerns whether county or matters of county, inter-county, national, regional, or even international concerns. And this is the time or the day that is allocated for those members of the cabinet to appear before the Senate to respond to those concerns. So we expect that the quorum will be raised so as the House can be able to transact this particular business that the members have already planned for this morning. As indicated earlier, 3 cabinet secretaries are lined up or are expected to appear before the Senate chambers: the Cabinet Secretary for Defense, the Cabinet Secretary for Tourism and Wildlife, as well as the Cabinet Secretary for Education. The Cabinet Secretary for Tourism and Wildlife, Rebecca Miano, will be responding to concerns that were forwarded to the ministry by nominated, or rather from nominated Senator Honorable Joyce Korir. And this question or these concerns revolve around the current status of the tourism sector in Kenya and how the recent trends in tourism arrivals compare between domestic and international visitors. Also, linked to that is the factors that have contributed to the recent decline in international tourism arrivals, particularly in contrast with the performance of other East African destinations. Also linked to this particular question would be that the Cabinet Secretary, whether she could specify the strategies the ministry is implementing to enhance Kenya's global tourism competitiveness, including steps taken to promote new tourism products and leverage digital platforms for marketing. The stand right at the front of the House, or just next to the Speaker, is a stand where once the Cabinet Secretaries are ushered into the chamber to respond to these questions, will be standing, or that is the positions that they will be taking to be able to respond or address the House on these particular matters. The quorum bell is still on. This is the time that the leadership of the House, particularly the whips of the House, that is both houses, that is the rather both sides, that is the minority side and the majority side, are needed to be able to whip members to get into the chambers. This is to be able to allow the House raise that quorum just to avert a situation that the House be adjourned as provided for in the House Standing Order, that if the quorum is not raised after the lapse of the 2 rounds of quorum bells, then the House risks being adjourned until the next sitting. So if that quorum is not raised, then perhaps this business that is lined up for consideration might not be considered this morning. Let's listen in.
Ring the quorum bell for a further 10 minutes.
Well, the House has not yet attained that much needed quorum, and the Speaker has directed that the quorum bell be rung for a further 10 minutes. This is the second round of that particular quorum bell. If the House does not raise the quorum at the lapse of this 10-minute quorum bell, then chances are high that the House may not be able to proceed with its sitting this morning, owing to the rules that govern the House. It is a House of rules and thereby has to abide by its rules. So we shall be waiting to see whether that number shall be reached at least 15 senators. And if it's not raised, then perhaps the House will have to adjourn, of course, going by the provisions of the Standing Order number 39 and 40. If you're just joining us, is that how the prayer has been said and the chair taken about 14 minutes into the sitting time, that is commencement of the House business, or the time allocated for the sitting was 9:30. It's now 9:44. The House is yet to raise that quorum for it to be able to commence its business. And the members that we can see inside the chambers are just less than the number that is required for the House to be deemed to have attained a quorum or quorated for it to commence its business. So this is the second round of the quorum bell. If that quorum is not raised, then the business that is lined up for consideration this morning may not be considered, of course, owing to the lack of the quorum. Being a Wednesday morning, cabinet secretaries are expected to appear before the chamber or the House to respond to various concerns. Already we can see that preparations have been done, the stand and the seats that once the cabinet secretaries appear with their delegation, then they may be able to take those positions just right in front of the chamber or at the side of the chamber, and also the stand where the cabinet secretaries will be taking position to be able to respond to the concerns. Talking about the cabinet secretaries, those expected to appear this morning as provided for in the House standing in the order of business: 3 cabinet secretaries, the cabinet secretary for defense, the cabinet secretary for tourism and wildlife, as well as the cabinet secretary for education. The cabinet secretary for defense, Soipantuya, will be responding to a question forwarded to the ministry. This is a question from the senator for Wajir County. Just one question. Of course, there are normally supplementary questions that are linked to the primary question. The cabinet secretary for tourism and wildlife, Rebecca Miano, will also be responding to one question from the nominated senator, Honorable Joyce Korir. And of course, will be followed up by perhaps supplementary questions. However, the cabinet secretary for education, if he appears before the Senate this morning, will be responding to concerns from, or rather 5 questions from the nominated senator, Honorable Karen Nyamu, has 3 questions to the cabinet secretary for education. The senator for Muranga County, Honorable John Yutu, has 1 question also to the cabinet secretary for education, and the final question will be coming from the senator for Tharaka Nithi, Honorable Mwenda Gataya. So we shall be taking a look at these questions or the concerns that these members have raised regarding the education ministry. And the nominated senator, Honorable Karen Nyamu, will be asking the cabinet secretary for education regarding the plan to accelerate the construction of the 18,000 grade 9 classrooms nationwide, and the progress that is being made specifically in Nairobi City County, and also what other interventions the ministry considering to ensure that there are adequate learning spaces in schools countrywide. The second question is regarding, if you're just joining us, that the House is awaiting to correct. At least 15 senators are needed. Remember, this is the second round of the quorum bell. The first one has lapsed without the House managing to raise the quorum. This is the second 10-minute quorum bell that is underway. We are waiting for the House to correct, and we believe that it will be able to raise that quorum for it to commence its business, because this morning already the business that is lined up for consideration has been set aside. That is, cabinet secretaries have been invited to the Senate chambers to be able to respond to various concerns. The Cabinet Secretary for Education is one of the Cabinet secretaries that are this morning expected to appear before the Senate chambers. And the CS for Education will be responding to concerns also around the interventions the ministry is implementing to address the looming crisis caused by the 43.4 billion budget shortfall that is threatening free primary and secondary education, and also immediate measures being implemented to ensure that critical programs like funding for capitation and national examinations proceed without any disruptions. Also, whether the ministry has found ways of managing the impact of the current teacher shortages and delayed recruitment on the quality of education, as well as especially in underserved and marginalized areas, and what urgent steps that have been put in place to ensure all schools have adequate and qualified teaching staff. In line with that, the Honorable nominated Senator will be seeking to understand from the Cabinet Secretary on what specific measures the ministry has put in place to support students with disabilities. 21 minutes past the sitting time that has been allocated. This morning, 9:30 is the time that the House was convened or is expected to commence its business. However, after the Speaker's procession made its way into the chamber, the House faced a quorum hitch. And since then, the quorum bell has been on just to alert the members of the Senate that their presence is highly required inside the chambers. The members who may be within the precincts of Parliament but yet to make their way into the chamber, to understand that their presence inside the chamber is highly required, of course, to enable the House attain that much needed quorum for it to be able to commence its sitting as provided for in the House Standing Order number 39 and 40. However, if this second round of the quorum bell lapses and the quorum are not raised, then the House will adjourn until the next sitting, which will be this afternoon at 2:30 in the PM. I can see one of the clerks, of course, counting the numbers of the senators inside the chamber, just to see whether that quorum is about to be raised or may have been raised for the House to be called to order and for the business to commence. But we are, however, of course, awaiting for the Speaker to also direct on that, on whether the quorum has been raised or not. And, of course, we believe in a few. All right, let's listen in to the Speaker.
Honorable Senators, there being no quorum and having rang the bell pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 42, the Senate stands adjourned until later today, Wednesday, 30th July 2025 at 2:30 p.m.